Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Pearsall. I'm the community manager here at at the Social Emotional Learning and Education community, and with Committee for Children as well, which brings you the Social Emotional Learning and Education community. And I'm pleased to have you all join us again for the next in our Social Emotional Learning and Education speaker series. And today we're going to be bringing Jordan Posamentier, the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Committee for Children, back one last time for the final talk in our series on the intersection of social emotional learning and equity. I'm really pleased to be able to bring Jordan in for this last conversation. Jordan, today we are going to be talking about educator diversity, which I think is a really interesting topic, and not one that I normally hear come up when we're talking about issues of equity and social emotional learning. So I appreciate the chance to talk about it a little bit.
Good to see you again.
And I wanted to just kind of start off by saying, by asking, how does educator diversity promote kind of overall educational opportunity for students?
Well, let's get started. Yeah, this one, like you said, is maybe not on the direct line of sight for folks trying to make the connection between SEL and educator diversity and equity. So let's start with just a couple facts. Right now, educator workforce is predominantly white. It's about 84%, and white students make up about 51% of the public school student population. The thing is, diversity leads to increased academic engagement, increased high school graduation, and increased college enrollment, and it helps all kids. It's important to remember having a diverse workforce helps all kids. Getting familiar with grown-ups of different backgrounds is enriching for kids, prepares them to engage with people from all walks as they grow up and out into the world. But it's also particularly helpful for minority populations. For example, Black students with one Black teacher in their educational career were more likely to graduate and enroll in college. Black principals are more likely to hire Black educators, and having Black principal also reduces the turnover of Black educators in the workforce. This is even true of school counselors. If you have a school counselor that's the same race as the student, particularly non-white kids, that promotes high school graduation and college attendance rates. So we're seeing a number of different ways that diversity can work to the better of kids. But why is all this happening? And this sort of will dovetail into the SEL conversation. But there are a couple of ideas. It's hard to really point to any one thing. Maybe it's because role modeling takes root with educator diversity. Maybe it's because having grown-ups with similar backgrounds helps kids feel like they belong. Definitely goes with fewer suspensions and expulsions, as we discussed in an earlier conversation. And some scholars will say that Black teachers benefit Black students through fostering pride in racial identity and connection to community. Whatever it is, all of that leads to improved academic engagement and engagement in school generally. I want to talk about some of the ignored benefits of diversity real quick.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
There's this idea that has been around for a long time. It's a long-standing theory. It's empirically validated as a way to curb racism, and it's called intergroup contact theory. The idea here is that exposure to different groups can reduce bias or hostility to others. That's what diversity does. It allows a student and an educator get together, or educators to get together with one another, students one another from all walks. And with that familiarity comes a prevention or even a reduction of possible racial hostility.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ability to interact with one another has a really transformative effect on a community.
So how does SEL come into this effort to promote diversity? Where's the connection?
Yes, let's glue these things together.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers of color are leaving the field at higher rates than their white counterparts. When asked why they leave, they report experiencing unwelcoming school cultures, among other things. School leaders who want to promote retention of teachers of color can address school culture as a point of focus and tap into teachers' desires to enhance students' social emotional learning. When you go and survey educators, particularly educators of color, they are interested and enthusiastic about school culture and social emotional learning. Let's focus on that. SEL can contribute to a workforce diversification by helping create those supportive school environments, right? That'll help teachers when choosing to stay in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's educator diversity offers these additional chances for students to practice SEL, connects with social awareness, with working with differences. These are all bread and butter social emotional learning skills. I'm not sure how kids in a homogeneous setting are expected to build those skills as richly, frankly. It's kind of a bummer for them, really. Diversity offers so many opportunities to practice these skills in an enriched setting.
Is there legislation that's advancing this stuff? So kind of bring it to this, kind of come into the policy world that I know is your wheelhouse.
Yes.
What legislation is helping to build a diverse educator workforce?
Yes, and now we glue the diversity SEL conversation to policy. Let's do it. Pieces of legislation at both state and federal levels have been introduced that would promote diversity in the educator workforce. Lots going on in the space, and probably more to come in 2021. At the federal level, the Teacher Diversity and Retention Act is designed to promote recruitment, training, retention of teacher candidates and strengthen educators' preparation by including SEL competencies, restorative justice, and cultural responsiveness. That's one. There's another one, the Strength and Diversity Act, that provides grants that could be used to promote and expand teacher diversity. That's federal. Let's go down to the state. I'll highlight one. Happened in Minnesota, there are a couple of bills, House File 117, and on the Senate, it's 61. They got introduced earlier this year in June in 2020. Both of them provide for funding to increase the number of educators of color specifically, as well as supporting schools' curriculum and climate to allow it to be more inclusive of racial and ethnic diversity. That's a tiny little bit. There's a lot more happening here, but I wanted to highlight just those as a starter.
Are those the same Minnesota bills that we were talking about in our last talk? We're talking about Minnesota promoting social emotional learning.
Oh, you caught me. I don't know. We'd have to check.
Okay.
A lot of those come in. I actually don't think so. Minnesota's actually been producing quite a few pieces of legislation in this space, so these might be distinct from those.
Okay. You know, there's something that we used to do when we first started doing these talks, where we would cheer states that were doing this work. We stopped doing it. So I just want to say thank you, yay Minnesota, for putting this forward.
Yeah, for sure. Worth applause.
Yeah. So how can all of us who are listening support this work? What are some things that we can do to do our part to help make this happen?
Yes. Well, you're an advocate too. It's just a matter of whether or to what extent you wish to use your voice. The Strength and Diversity Act of 2020, the one we just talked about, it crossed over to the Senate, so it passed out of the House and over to the Senate. And you can call your senators or the folks who are in charge of the Health Committee on the Senate side. Chairman Alexander, who's outgoing, he's from Tennessee. He's the ranking member. He's the chair, and then the ranking member out of Washington State, Senator Murray. They need to hear from you. They need to hear you care about this, and this is what they need to spend their time on. The Teacher Diversity and Retention Act, that one's kind of languished in the House Education Committee, but you can call them too. The folks in charge of that, Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Fox, just send him a nice note saying, hey, noticed you haven't been doing a lot with this bill. Would like you to change your mind on that. And if you're looking for more information generally, of course, I'd point you to our policy brief on SEL and racial equity. That's available just to get a deeper dive. And always sign up to stay informed with us. We send you those action alerts at key moments. Right now, we're in what's called the lame duck session, where Congress will be a new composition come 2021. So they're tying up their loose ends as they end their session and head out for the winter holiday.
So, and we were talking about this a little bit before we got started, but I thought it was an interesting kind of question, is that, so there's a lot of people here who are not from Tennessee or Washington State. Is there still value in reaching out to these representatives, even if they're not your representative or your senator?
Yeah, good question. So without fail, lawmakers like to hear from their constituents, but these lawmakers have special positions. And so they are interested in hearing from anyone who cares about the subject matter over which they have that leadership role. So like Chairman Scott, while you might not be in his particular district, you care about education, so you need to talk to him since he's kind of in charge of the committee that's dealing with it. And same is true of the others. So don't be daunted just because they're not yours per se. They're all of ours at the end of the day, and they need to hear from you.
And for everybody who's watching this, you're also welcome to share this video with other people and kind of spread the word, so that we can kind of move out within our own networks and help kind of engage more people in advocating for this and for all of the different advocacy and policy things that we've been talking about here in this series over the last couple months. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share or add to this particular kind of take on SEL and equity?
Well, just want to say thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure having these conversations with you. If anyone watching wants to reach out and talk to me and learn a little bit more about what's going on in your neck of the woods, or maybe you know something you'd like to share, send me a note. I'm highly accessible. I'm just an email away. It's very easy to do these days.
Oh, and what is your email?
It's J, my whole last name, which you may want to share in there. It's Posamentier at cfchildren.org.
All right, I'll drop it in the chat right here.
I'll do my best to respond quickly.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really generous of you to drop it in to put that out there. So, and I want to say thank you very much as well. It's always a pleasure to have you come in and give this I think a really unique perspective on kind of the role of social emotional learning, not in this particular case in equity, but in general around kind of pulling back the curtain on the policy and advocacy work that's going on to help promote kind of social emotional learning within the halls of government, and which is critically important, but I think is often a mysterious process. So it's really been a pleasure. I hope that we find a time to bring you back to the SEL education community to talk in the future. But until then, I want to say thank you so much on behalf of everybody who's watching today. And I also wanted to remind everybody that this doesn't have to be the end of the conversations for us. You are welcome to come into the social emotional learning and education community right here on Facebook. Join the group and join in the conversations. We're having conversations like this all the time around critical issues of social emotional learning, and we would love to have you. If you're not a part of it already, we would love to have you join. So with that, I'm going to say farewell, everybody, and have an excellent day.